walking with Christ, with the path that he has put before me, not my own, and to know that I am following him gives me a strength. You know, there are so many times in life when we're stuck in a position where we don't think we're going to get out, where we have no real solutions. But I'm telling you that with Christ, everything is free, everything is easier, everything is promised into paradise. You know, you never know what could happen in life. You could be standing one day preaching and everything goes to chaos, but know that you've walked with Christ and have strength with that. You know, we are not violent people. We do not want to conduct violence against people. We are not of the world like that. You know, our hope is that everyone will accept Jesus and move on to heaven with us. You know, there's a path for everyone to heaven, and there's also a larger path to hell. And that path is easy to fall into. It's filled with anger and hatred and evil things. But with Christ, you can reject it. You can accept his forgiveness. You can move forward, and you can find a path to enlightenment through paradise and heaven. It becomes a part of life when you have to suffer. But know this, when you get to heaven, there will be no suffering. There will be no evil. God is with us. He is with us here on earth. He is watching us. He's testing us. And he wants us to follow. You know, you never know what could happen. You know, you'll never know what future will have. It's just so chaotic, so chaos-oriented. The devil whispers into the ear to do it, and people say, that sounds like a great idea. You know, the devil says to us, hey, this will be a great fun. And as you're burning and you're saying, hey, it's fun, it's not. You know, if you can find it, it's an everlasting joy. If you can't, it's a darkness worse than anything. You know, I often don't have words to say. I don't know. I go off the hand. I say what's in my heart. I say what I feel. And at times I get confused, but I know that I'm walking the path that God's put before me. I know that with him, my life has gotten better. Even if it's gotten a little worse at times, I pray on it. I get down on my hands and knees and I say, God, I've fallen. Please, Lord, pick me up. And I'll often feel a feeling. It feels as if I'm being picked up. I get an energy and I move forward and I'm just so relieved. And it just gets to be a point in life where you never quite know what's going to happen. You know, the only thing that we can be secure in is when we walk with Christ, there's an end that leads to paradise. And it's very difficult at times. Sin is very appealing. Sin whispers and says, look, what's a little bit of wrath? You know, in the greater things. What's a little bit of lust? What's a little bit of greed? What's a little bit of every little demon-infested sin? The demons don't have a body, so they whisper into your ear and manipulate you so that you will fall. And it's not a good life to have when you're listening to demons. You know, I listened to demons for years, fell apart, thought I could never be saved, thought I could never do anything for Jesus, and here I am, doing everything I can now. It may not be a lot, it may not be perfect, but it's my best attempt, and every day it gets a little bit easier and a little better. You know, and I thank God. I thank him for so many good things that he's brought into my life. He's cured me from addictions. He's cured me from physical ailments. He's reduced my suffering. For 9 years, I tried to get rid of my suffering on my own, and it didn't work. And then finally, I got down on my hands and knees, and I said, God, I know that your plan's the only way that I'm going to be able to find freedom from my pain. And sure enough, within 3 days I got a phone call and my life changed entirely for the better. I got a new place to live. I ended friendships with people that were constantly causing me problems. People that were dragging me down and convincing me that sin was okay. Well, I got rid of those friends and now I feel more free than I've ever felt in my entire life. You know, amen to God. Amen to this wonderful place that He's put me through and put me into. You know, I was so afraid of everything. I was afraid that I wouldn't be accepted. I was afraid that my sin was eternal, that I was going to suffer for eternity. And now I don't feel that. And there's times when I feel the devil say to me, hey, why don't you try this again? Why don't you go back to the club life? Why don't you go back to drinking? Why don't you go back to smoking weed? And I have to remind myself that's not who I am anymore. You know, that's not what I want. I want to be free from those things. And when I remind myself of that, I immediately, though the temptation's there, it leaves. But the sad thing about temptation is it never goes away all the way. You will always live in temptation. And it's not wrong to be tempted. It's wrong to fall to temptation and commit sin. You know, everybody is tempted. True strength is when you get tempted and you say no. And you don't just stop saying no. You say no forever. You say, I'm not doing this. This isn't my life anymore. You know, I'm not going to live like this anymore. I'm not going to be like this anymore. You know, it becomes one step after another, and eventually you feel free, but still temptation comes and it rattles a chain and it says, doesn't this look appealing? It's made out of gold. Well, the gold chain is not appealing. The silver chain is not appealing. These metals are worthless. They do not bring salvation. You know, they bring financial debt, and then eventually, if you can't afford to pay it, they send somebody to collect it. And it gets to the point where a lot of people fall. You know, I knew people that they fell into debt, and that was one way that they fell deeper and deeper into sin, and before they knew it, they couldn't get out. And they would always come to me and say, what do I do? And I would say to them, pray twice a day. When you wake up in the morning, pray and thank God for getting you through the night. And then when you go to bed at night, pray and thank God for getting you through the day. Start with that for a week, and if you feel better, then keep going with it. If you don't feel better, come and tell me that I was wrong. And I've had people try it, and they do it for 1 or 2 days, and they feel like, well, I got better, so I didn't feel like I needed to do it again. And I said, well, keep doing it for a week and see how good you feel. You know, keep doing it. Don't let go. Don't falter. And I eventually had to let those friends go. I had to say that it wasn't my way anymore. It wasn't my path. You know, I would tell them, if you accept Jesus, if you move your life in a way that God accepts, then maybe then we can talk about another friendship. You know, if you can find salvation through Christ, maybe then we can talk. But until then, we can't.